3 weeks, 4 weeks ago.
So it was it a real party?
Kind of, yes.
Okay, how about you?
Real party also.
Hmm?
About a real party also, about a week ago.
Okay.
Very old one.
Yes, how long ago?
Nearly a year ago.
Did you party since then? Did you have other parties?
Yeah, but that was
Okay.
the first one.
So did you see two scenarios? One scenario, a lot of people remembered the most recent. And then somebody else remembered something that was not the most recent. Those who remembered the most recent, remembered it because it's the most recent. And usually, events that happen, when they happen, they're very emotionally charged. And as we move away from them, we start to lose this emotional charge. Except for events that have an overdose of emotions. Right? So your event meant a lot to you. And that's why you remembered it, although you had a lot of parties after it. And so these are two things, associations. You associate either something that is the most recent or something that is extremely emotionally charged anytime during your life. And so unless Prozac is something you're extremely emotionally charged towards, then most probably the sandwich will not work because Prozac will become a distraction. Because when you read the title, you will stop at Prozac, for example. You will remember your depression. And it will distract you from really understanding and reading. And once you get to Prozac at the end, then you have been distracted and you won't get the point. But did you notice the probability? Okay, so it's a lot less...
That's very high.
It's a lot less frequent that people remember something very emotionally charged versus something most recent. And that's why it works a lot of the time. And so people who read Prozac, when they get to Prozac, the first thing that they remember is the beginning of the article. Right? And once the mind remembers, goes back to the beginning, then automatically in a fraction of a second, and this is unconscious, it remembers all of the links and everything. It's like in a fraction of a second you zoomed out into a bird's eye view, and now you understand the whole idea. You understand, you can almost claim it as your own and go defend it in front of someone because you don't know about it, but you understand it. Of course, if what's happening in the middle works, which we're going to get to now. Okay, so just to recap, we've covered a bit of structure. Okay, connecting, conveying, convincing. Okay, using the right associations, like Prozac, or like naming the audience, or the right keywords and all this. Right, going through problem, solution, all this. This is whenever you want to write something, just look back and see how you're going to structure it. What are you starting with first? What are you saying first? Did you cover the context, etc. And then into the brief what, and then the why, and then the what, and then the how, and maybe going back to the brief what. Okay, and now we're going to go more into what happens in the middle, what happens in between. Okay, and so I'll start with a lot of ways that we could actually start. Okay, sandwich of course also covers the structure. Okay, a lot of times you could start by making a strong statement, a very powerful statement. There's a drawback in that, is that if you cannot support that powerful statement, people will move away from you. And this is what also Jessica said. Unmute. Speak. Okay. So, this is life-changing. Okay? That's a very powerful statement. Did you see how the eyes trump the ears? So I'll give you a minute. Because you won't listen to what I'm saying. You're actually reading. How many times did anyone put up a slide in front of you with a lot of text and you actually read?
I do it all the time.
Okay.
whenever I see something.
How many of you do it?
It depends.
أنا حبيت الكود so تجبرك إنه تكمل.
And the way that you put it, like join the community, the pledge.
Yeah. I'll leave this till the end because I'm going to put it up for you and I'm going to ask you to use everything that you've learned today to try to uncover all of these things inside that. That's the most piece of thing that I've ever written. That it contains the most number of all of these that I've ever been able to put in one single piece of writing. This is, by the way, this is Vida, and Sharif and I were working on this as a startup. And then we had to travel to study. Okay? So make a statement. This is life-changing. When you read this is life-changing, it's such a big statement that you have to figure out how. Why is it life-changing? Is it really life-changing? And so there's a zillion things happening in your mind. There's a zillion questions going on, and you want answers to all of these just because of this statement. Okay? And it didn't really say like exactly what it is. Okay? It just said briefly, so what is it? It's life-changing. Okay, what is it? Right? But make sure, like I said, make sure that you can support it. Make sure you can really prove in a way or convince that it is life-changing. Or else, once people get to the middle and they're like, that's not life-changing, because this is the opposite of saying a lower than standard expectation. That's setting a huge expectation of your readers, and you have to be able to match it. So use it sparingly. Okay? Or else you could start every single article. You're right, but this is life-changing. Right? It'll work during the first paragraph, and then people will not move through the rest of the F. F for failure, basically. Right? So if people do that, then it's a failure. Okay? So we'll come back to this later. This is... Okay. I'll go back to those, I think. So, another way is to start with a story. Don't make whatever you're writing the story. The story needs to be short and brief, because first you cover what, in a way, you're talking about, and then you engage them in a very short and personal, maybe powerful story, for them to get into context. For that, because what a story does, your mind is like all over the place, and my mind is all over the place, but they're all over two different places. And so is yours, and so is yours. Okay? For me to start to explain something to you, the best way and most effective way I could do that if I could bring us all together so that all our minds are in one place, and now I know that we're all on common grounds, and then I could start explaining from this common ground. So you know that starting with a story is powerful, right? You're right. But did you know why it works this way? Right? And once you understand this, then you could use it in a zillion other ways without necessarily starting with a short story. You could notice it and you could do a zillion things with it. It's all about bringing you and your audience to a common ground that you all identify with, that you all know what it feels like, you've experienced it, and then start from there. And so, for example, that's like 10 words, but that's a short story. I was sitting with Hanan. We had talked earlier about energy theft. Suddenly a realization starts to form. Okay, so just by reading that, a lot of us are now sitting with Hanan, or are seeing two people sitting together. The reason why it's a story, if I said I was sitting with Hanan and then stopped there, it's not as powerful as creating a history before the story. Right? So he said we had talked earlier. So it's like there's a lot of things that happened. It's not just two people sitting together. There's a connection between them. There's a lot of history between those two people, and we all identify with that. And that's it. It might not mean anything to the rest of the note, but it brings people to the same common space that you could go on with. A realization starts to form. Ego. What is it really? I've taken many courses in meditation, so the story ended, and I started talking, right? But now I know that at least because, I mean, I might understand my audience because I'm writing to myself, but I have no idea, every single reader, what happened with him during the day, or where he comes from, and what's on his mind, etc. And pulling the readers away from their chaotic thoughts and daily lives and bringing them to a common place helps them become less distracted with everything that's trying to grab their attention. Do you have something to say?
No. Yeah.
Are you sure? Really? You don't have an objection?
No. Does it seem like I do?
Yes. Okay. Were you processing a lot of things? Okay, would you like to share? the sitting with Hanan thing triggered some
Yeah.
some old...
No, I
thought.
really want to read the rest of it also.
Okay.
Because I'm interested in energy and all of that stuff.
Right. Okay. I've talked about